Then when he gets into the House of Representatives, when he runs, he's a terrible underdog. I mean, no one thinks that this young guy is going to come back. He's got his law degree from Yale. He's got an econ degree from the University of Michigan. You know, he only has a couple of years practicing law. No one thinks, oh, and he'd had a little bit of a career as a model. Not many people are aware of that, but he's on the cover of like Vogue, and very good-looking man. His day with, you know, full shock of hair and, you know, blondish, and had this torrid love affair with this woman before Betty, with a very beautiful woman who was also a model. But she decided to go to New York City, and he had other plans. But you know, he had this ambition to run for office, and he knew that it'd be difficult to beat the incumbent, Bartle Yonkman, in the 5th Congressional District in Grand Rapids, but he decides to take him on, and he just works hard, and he beats the incumbent in the primary. And then he goes on, because it's a conservative, it's a Republican district, he wins easily then in the general election of everybody. No one thought he could do that. Am I painting a picture of Ford that surprises you? I mean, sort of the Saturday Night Live version is of this guy who's kind of bumbling and, you know, not quite coordinated and a little slow. That's not Ford. You don't get through U of M econ, you don't get through Yale Law where you have any mental slowness or problems. Yes?
You've been talking about President Ford's ambition, and I was wondering if you had read about or heard from him while he was president or after he was president regarding Speaker of the House. He always wanted to be Speaker of the House, and he never got to be.
That's right.
How did he,
handle that?
Yeah, handle that.
Well, your question's a very good one. It's exactly, it's exactly, your question is exactly where I was going, because after I've shown you know what kind of child he was, what kind of student he was, what kind of student athlete he was, Boy Scout and so forth, same thing happens. He runs in 48. He's going to be reelected, 12 more times. And his goal had been to be Speaker of the House, as you say. And that he was happy being at the top, Speaker of the House. He became minority leader because, of course, the Republicans were in the minority in the 1960s. He became minority leader, and so he was frustrated. And interestingly, when he ran in 1972, he told Betty, he told his family, he said, I won't run again. This is the last time. And he contented himself basically to be the House minority leader, and history, of course, had something else in store, which changed his life dramatically once the, what should I say? I shouldn't say Vice President Agnew, the President of Vice, Spiro Agnew, resigned because he ended up being accused and convicted of being a tax cheat.
I didn't know he wasn't going to run again in '74.
Yeah, he had decided that. So you see a person who has an ambition. You see somebody with a fire in the belly, somebody who has the quest for the best. You also see in Ford an extremely hard worker. The people who have gone back and interviewed his coaches, his football coaches, said that he was the hardest working player on any team. This is how he became voted the best high school football player in the state. This is how the Wolverine squad voted him the most valuable player, because of his hard work on the field. And as an economics major at U of M, he worked hard to master economics. It would become instrumental in the way he ran the House Appropriations Committee, or the Republican side of the committee later. Very instrumental. But he always worked hard to master the job that was at hand. He was one of the few people, he was the last House Minority Leader, the last president to do this. To take the federal budget home, study it. Remember, he was an economist by training and a lawyer, so he knew how economics and law intersected. He was our last president who could take the federal budget home and absorb enough of it to be able to talk to Congress without staffers. Reagan couldn't do that. Carter couldn't do that. George H.W. Bush couldn't do that. Clinton, for all of his brilliance as a Rhodes Scholar, couldn't do that. Of course, the budget's gotten bigger. But Ford had that capacity in the mid-70s to do that. He worked hard. That was his homework. A second way the first way is a quest for the best. The second way that his passion expresses itself is through hard work. Let me say something, a little bit of something about luck. A lot of people say that leaders, good leaders, great leaders even, get where they are because of luck. You have to have elements of luck. I met the Polish President, Lech Walesa, 2 years ago. And I asked President Walesa, retired President Walesa, I said, and we had a translator, I said, what to you is the greatest quality of a leader? First thing he says, got to have courage. Got to have the guts to make a decision and stick by it. Good leaders make tough decisions. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. I said, okay, now that we're on a roll here, what's the second quality? Luck. Luck. He said, yes. He said, before I promoted generals, I asked them, do you win battles? You know, can you go out and do the things that make you victorious and what you're good at? And I've always remembered that. Robert Dallek, who's a famous presidential historian, also counts luck among the top 6 qualities that successful statesmen have. Luck. President Ford was lucky his entire life. He used to say that the biggest break in his life was when he had the opportunity to go to the University of Michigan, because he'd come from South High School in Grand Rapids. He could not afford, coming out of the Depression. Of course, I should say going into the Depression, he could not afford to pay the $50 a semester tuition, $100 a year. So he worked in a bookstore, he waited tables, he did all kinds of things. And he had people, he attracted people to him who wanted to help him. And perhaps that's the secret of luck. You have enough of a personality in your presence with people that people come forward and say, you know, Jerry, I want to help you. And that's what happened. His coaches, Coach Kipke, for example, helped him secure jobs so that he could go to U of M. And he said, that was the luckiest break I ever got. And then look what happens later. Under our 25th Amendment, he becomes the first unelected vice president and the first unelected president. He never lost an election until 1976, never after all those times in Congress. He was extremely lucky. By my count, he survived more brushes with death than every president but George Washington. Maybe a tie with Washington. Because if you consider, everybody knows about the 2 assassination attempts in September of '75 in California. 2 different women. He always had a little sexist joke about this. He came home after the second assassination attempt and he told his wife Betty, he said, boy, I'm glad women can't shoot straight. But that was the second time he'd been shot at. So he earned the right to say whatever he wanted to say at that point, having been shot at twice in California by 2 different women, about a month apart. He survived a plane crash, a very bad plane crash in the 1950s. And when he was serving on the USS Monterey in the Pacific, a terrible typhoon came up in the Pacific, and the USS Monterey was just pitching, and it was dangerous. And he goes out at one point on duty, and he loses his footing, and he slides, as he puts it in his memoirs, like a toboggan down the deck. And he's just about, this typhoon killed a number of U.S. sailors, and he's about to become a victim. And on the way, thank goodness he was the athlete he was, because on the way over, this strong guy who'd played football at the University of Michigan and who'd been drafted by the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers, this strong man was able to grab hold of the catwalk surrounding the carrier and save his life and crawl back to safety on the USS Monterey. Very lucky man, because any one of us in that situation, in the prime of our life, we probably would have just gone right on into the Pacific, and that would have been the end of us. So he was extremely fortunate, as I say, until the very end, of his political career when he lost to Jimmy Carter. So luck plays a role. It seems to be somehow connected with the hard work and the quest for the best. But it's hard to know how much credit to give luck. It's a fate thing.